The sky burned red as the warships clashed in orbit. The human warrior stood inside his armored suit, his hands firm on the controls, his eyes locked on the chaos before him. Lasers cut through the black sky, missiles roared, and alien ships twisted like serpents trying to break their formation. Beside him, his alien partner fought with courage. She was tall, silver-skinned, and her eyes glowed faintly with inner light. They had fought side by side for many years, their trust built on battles won and near-death escapes. They did not need words. Only a glance was enough to know what the other would do. The enemy today was unlike any they had faced before. Huge war beasts, living machines wrapped in metal and fire, descended from the void, tearing through the fleet. The human felt his heart pound, fear rising, but he did not back away. His alien partner let out a sharp cry in her own tongue, urging him to strike harder. Together they weaved through the storm, their weapons blazing. Each movement was perfect, as if they shared one mind. The human struck at the enemy's weak points while she covered him, her blade flashing bright against the metal skin of their foes. For a moment victory felt close, but then the sky cracked with a roar. A massive enemy war beast charged straight at them, its maw glowing with destructive fire. The human's sensors screamed warnings. There was no time to dodge. He shouted her name, but she was faster. She moved her ship in front of his, her shields flaring bright. The beast's fire struck, shaking the heavens with its force. Her ship groaned, metal ripping apart, sparks raining in every direction. "Pull back," the human cried, his voice breaking. But she only smiled, a small, calm smile that said everything. This was her choice, her last stand. Her voice reached him through the comms, soft yet strong. "Live, human. Fight for what we started." Her ship exploded in a storm of light. The fire swallowed her whole. The shockwave hurled his craft away, alarms screaming in his ears. He struggled to steady himself, hands trembling, eyes refusing to believe what he had just seen. The battlefield blurred, sounds fading into nothing. All he could see was the burning wreckage where she had been. All he could feel was the heavy silence of loss. The warrior who had saved him countless times was gone. The battle raged on, but for him, the world had stopped. He wanted to scream, to turn back, to dive into the flames and bring her back. But deep inside he knew she was gone, and worse, she had given her life for him. The enemy pushed harder, waves of fire striking the human fleet, but he fought on, rage and grief burning through his veins. He struck with fury, cutting down enemies left and right. As if each kill could bring her back, his body moved. But his mind replayed her last smile again and again. Hours passed like seconds, until the battle ended. The enemy withdrew, leaving broken ships and drifting bodies behind. The silence that followed was heavier than any weapon. Victory had been won, but it felt hollow, empty, cruel. The human warrior's ship limped back to the surviving fleet. His body ached, his suit cracked, his soul torn. He was welcomed as a survivor, but in his heart, he felt like a ghost. He had lost not just a partner, but a part of himself. As the fleet drifted back toward safety, whispers spread among the aliens. They spoke in hushed tones about the warrior who had fallen, but also about something more, something left behind. The human listened without care at first, his mind lost in grief, yet one word broke through the storm of his sorrow. Sister. His alien partner had a sister, one who lived far from the front lines, a sister no one had spoken of until now. Why was it kept a secret? Who was she? The human's heart stirred for the first time since the flames took his friend. The word echoed in his mind, filling the silence with a strange, fragile hope. The battle was over, but his story was not, because somewhere beyond the stars, his partner's blood still lived and destiny was waiting for him to find her. The battlefield was quiet now, but it was not peace. Broken ships drifted like corpses in the void, fires still burning, sparks floating into the darkness. The human warrior sat alone in his cockpit, his hands resting heavy on the controls, his eyes staring at the endless black. The victory had cost too much, and for him it did not feel like a victory at all. He could still hear the last words of his alien partner, the sound of her voice soft yet filled with strength. Live, human. Fight for what we started. Those words haunted him, echoing in his mind with every breath he had lived, but she had not. When the fleet limped back to the base station, the survivors were hailed as heroes. Crowds of aliens cheered, lights flashed, banners waved. But the human felt no pride, no joy. He walked through the celebration like a shadow. Every corner of the station reminded him of her. The empty seat in the mess hall where she used to sit. The sparring arena where they once trained together. Even the hangar, now silent, felt hollow without her presence. The commanders called him in. They praised his bravery, they spoke of his survival as a symbol of hope. But their words felt empty to him. How could hope be built on the ashes of someone he loved, like a sister in arms? At night, when the stars shone through the station's glass domes, he could not sleep. He closed his eyes and saw the fire. He opened them and saw only emptiness. Loneliness became his closest companion. Then one evening, as he sat in the archives chamber, searching records of the fallen, he found something strange. Her file was marked with a hidden note, a detail that had never been spoken of. It read, "Kin alive, location undisclosed." His heart skipped a beat. Kin. Family. The human leaned closer, reading every line. The file was locked, much of it restricted, but one word stood out to him like a spark in the dark. Sister, his partner, the alien warrior who had died in fire, had a sister. Why had no one told him this? Why had she never spoken of her family? He remembered their long talks between battles, their laughter, their quiet moments when both shared secrets. But she had never once spoken of a sister. The human carried the weight of questions with him for days. Every time he looked at the stars, he wondered, who was she, where was she, and why was her existence kept a secret? One night the whispers began. He overheard alien officers speaking softly in the hangar. They mentioned a distant colony, hidden deep in neutral space, a place untouched by the war, where her bloodline continued. The human felt a pull inside, a call stronger than duty. It was not enough to survive, he had to know. If his partner had a sister, he had to find her, not only to honor the one he had lost, but also because his heart told him this was not the end of the story. He prepared his ship quietly, keeping his plan hidden from the commanders. They would never approve, they would call it reckless. They would say he was chasing ghosts, but he did not care. This was his path, his choice, just as she had chosen hers. Before leaving, he stood in the hangar and placed his hand on the cold metal of her ruined ship. The wreck had been dragged. Back as a relic of sacrifice, he whispered to it, as if she could still hear, "I will find her, I promise." The journey into deep space was long and lonely. The stars stretched endlessly, silent witnesses to his grief. He thought often of her smile, of her voice, and of the mysterious sister he had never met. Was she like her, brave and fierce, or different, carrying secrets of her own? Days turned into weeks, and the loneliness pressed harder. But with every star he passed, he felt closer to answers, closer to destiny, closer to the last piece of his partner's story. Finally, his sensors caught the trace of a hidden world, a colony shrouded in mist, its signals faint, as if it wished to remain forgotten. His heart pounded as he guided his ship closer. Could this truly be the place? The planet below was green, alive, filled with forests and rivers unlike the war-torn worlds he had seen. It looked peaceful, untouched by the hand of destruction. But behind beauty often lay secrets, and he had come here for the greatest secret of all. He landed on the edge of a settlement, his ship stirring dust and leaves. The aliens who lived there stared at him, whispers spreading quickly. They looked at him not with fear, but with curiosity, as if they had been waiting for him. Then, among the crowd, a figure stepped forward, tall, graceful, her silver skin glowing under the light of the twin suns. Her eyes the same glowing hue as his fallen partner's. Locked on his, the human's breath caught, his chest tight with shock. It was her, the sister, alive, real, standing before him, and with her presence, the silence of his grief cracked open, replaced by a new question. Why had she been hidden, and what role would she play in his fate? The human warrior stood frozen as the crowd parted. Before him walked the sister of the one he had lost. Her steps were slow, yet strong, her silver skin shining under the twin suns, her eyes glowing faintly like twin stars. For a moment, time itself seemed to hold still. She was like his fallen partner and yet not the same. The same tall figure, the same sharp features, but her presence carried something different, something softer, something hidden. The human's heart ached as he looked at her, because every detail reminded him of the one he had lost, but he also felt something new, a strange energy, a mystery waiting to be uncovered. The settlement was silent, every alien watching carefully. The sister stopped a few steps away and spoke, her voice calm but filled with weight. "You are the human," she said, "the one she fought beside." Her words cut through the air like a blade. The human swallowed hard, unable to speak at first. He had imagined this moment during his long journey, but now that it was real, he did not know what to say. Finally, he managed, "Yes, I fought with her and I lost her." His voice cracked, grief pressing down on him. For the first time, the sister's eyes softened, a shadow of sorrow passing over her face. "I know," she whispered. "I felt it." The human frowned, not understanding, but before he could ask, she turned and motioned for him to follow. "Come. There is much you must hear." She led him through the settlement, past curious eyes and quiet whispers. The people here seemed to respect her, even fear her. The human noticed how they lowered their heads as she walked. It was clear she was not an ordinary villager. They entered a small hall carved from stone, lit with soft crystals. The sister sat across from him, her posture straight, her gaze never leaving his. "You wonder why you never knew about me," she said, her tone steady. "Why she never spoke of me." The human nodded, his chest tight with questions. "She kept me hidden for a reason," the sister continued, her voice firm, "because I was not meant to fight in this war." The human's eyes narrowed. "But why? You are strong, you could have stood by her side." The sister shook her head slowly. "Strength is not only in battle. My role was different, one that had to remain secret." Her words stirred something uneasy inside him. Was she protecting a secret or hiding something darker? Before he could press further, she leaned closer, her glowing eyes sharp. "She trusted you more than anyone. She gave her life for you, but you must know, her sacrifice was not only for survival, it was for destiny." The human felt a chill run down his spine. "What destiny?" he asked, voice low. The sister did not answer right away. Instead, she studied him, as if weighing his soul. Finally, she said, "The war you fight is only the surface. There are forces greater than you have seen, and my bloodline is tied to them." The human leaned back, confusion swirling in his mind. Was this the reason she had been hidden? Was this why his partner never spoke of her? The sister's gaze softened again, just slightly. "You came here seeking answers, and I will give them. But first, you must prove you are worthy of them." Suspense thickened in the room, the silence heavy. The human clenched his fists. "I came here to honor her, to understand, not to play games." Her lips curved in a faint smile, but it was not cruel, more like testing. "And that is why you may be ready," she said, her voice quiet but certain. Suddenly, a distant horn echoed through the settlement. The aliens outside began to shout, their voices filled with alarm. The sister stood quickly, her silver skin flashing in the light. "They have come sooner than I thought," she whispered. The human rushed after her, heart racing. "Who has come?" he demanded. She turned her glowing eyes toward the sky, where dark shapes began to descend through the clouds. "The enemy you thought you defeated," she answered, her tone sharp with certainty. "They hunt me too." The human stared at her in shock. She had known they would come, she had been waiting. The enemy that had taken his partner's life was here again. And somehow, her sister was also their target. The human realized that her secrets were not only about bloodlines or hidden roles, They were about survival, about the fate of both their worlds. The crowd scattered as the enemy ships broke through the clouds, their weapons glowing with deadly light. The sister's voice cut through the chaos, clear and commanding. "Come with me, human, if you wish to live and if you wish to learn the truth." The human had no choice, no time for doubt. Together they ran toward the edge of the settlement, the roar of engines shaking the ground. For the first time since his partner's death, the human felt the fire of battle rise again inside him. But now it was not only grief that pushed him forward. It was the mystery of this sister, the secrets she carried, and the sense that his journey had only just begun. The human warrior and the alien sister ran through the settlement as fire rained from the sky. Enemy ships cut the air with blazing beams, turning homes into ash, scattering the villagers in panic. The human's heart pounded with fury. This was the same enemy that had taken his partner from him. Now they had returned. And they wanted her sister too. The sister moved with speed and grace, guiding him through hidden tunnels and narrow paths. Even as chaos spread above, she never slowed, her glowing eyes sharp with focus. At last, they reached a cavern deep under the settlement, its walls glowing faintly with crystals. There she stopped and faced him, her breath steady. "You want the truth," she said, her voice echoing softly. "Then you must hear it now, even as the world burns above us." The human frowned, anger rising in him. "Why are they after you? Why did my partner die while protecting me? And why were you hidden?" The sister did not flinch at his words. Instead, she lifted her hand and touched the crystal wall. The cavern responded, light spreading across the surface, revealing carvings and symbols older than the war itself. "This is the secret she carried," the sister whispered. "The truth of our bloodline, the reason she never spoke of me." The human stared at the glowing wall, the symbols shifting like living fire. He felt as if unseen eyes were watching him, weighing him, "Our family," the sister continued, "was born not only to fight but to guard something greater, something ancient." She turned, her eyes meeting his, glowing brighter than before. "There is a power hidden in our veins, tied to the stars themselves, a power the enemy wants for themselves." The human's chest tightened, shock mixing with confusion. "Your partner knew this," she said softly. "And she carried the burden of protecting me, because I am the last who can awaken it." The human staggered back, his mind spinning. His partner had sacrificed herself not only for him but for this secret. For her sister, it was more than duty, it was destiny. The cavern shook as another blast struck above, dust falling from the ceiling. The human gritted his teeth. "So all this time the war was not about territory or power, it was about you." The sister nodded slowly, her face calm yet filled with sorrow. "Yes, about me, and about you too." The human froze, her words echoing in his mind. "What do you mean, me?" he asked sharply. The sister stepped closer, her glowing eyes piercing into him. "She chose you for a reason, human. Your bond with her was no accident. She saw something in you, something I now see as well." The air felt heavy, as if the cavern itself held its breath. The human's heart raced, torn between grief, anger, and fear. He wanted to demand answers, but part of him already knew. He was tied to this secret, to this destiny, whether he wanted it or not. Suddenly, the cavern door burst open, enemy soldiers storming inside, their weapons glowing red. The sister's eyes flared, brighter than ever, and the crystals in the walls responded to her power. Light surged across the chamber, striking the invaders, throwing them back in a storm of energy. The human shielded his eyes, stunned by the raw force she released. When the light faded, the soldiers lay broken, the air thick with smoke. The sister's shoulders trembled, her breath uneven, but her eyes still blazed with power. "This is what they fear," she whispered. "And what they desire, the bloodline's gift." The human stared at her in awe, his voice rough. "You are more than a warrior. You are a weapon." Her expression darkened, her voice low. "No, not a weapon. A key. And without me, the enemy cannot unlock what they seek. But with me, They could destroy entire worlds. The human felt the weight of her words like chains around his chest. If the enemy captured her, it would mean the end of everything. Outside, the battle grew louder, the colony falling piece by piece. The sister looked at him, her eyes softer now, her voice steady but heavy. I need you, human, not only as a fighter, but as the one she trusted most. Will you stand with me? Even when the truth is darker than you expect. The human clenched his fists, his partner's last smile flashing in his memory. He had sworn to honor her sacrifice, and now he knew the way. I will stand with you, he said, his voice strong. I will fight for her and for you. For the first time, the sister allowed a faint smile, not of triumph but of trust. Then our paths are joined, she whispered. The cavern shook again, the sound of enemy engines closing in. The human readied his weapon, fire burning in his chest. But deep inside, questions remained. What was this ancient power? Why was he tied to it? And what price would he have to pay? As they prepared to face the enemy together, the human realized that his journey had only grown darker. He had lost a partner, but in her sister he had found not only an ally, but a mystery that could decide the fate of the galaxy. And in the shadows beyond the battlefield, unseen forces stirred, waiting for the moment when the secret of the bloodline would finally be revealed. The colony was left in ruins after the attack. Smoke rose into the sky, the cries of survivors filled the air, and the ground was littered with the scars of war. The human warrior stood among the wreckage with the sister by his side, both of them breathing heavy but unbroken. The enemy had been pushed back for now, but they both knew it was only the beginning. The sister turned to him, her eyes glowing faintly in the dim light. They will come again stronger than before, she said, her voice steady. We must be ready. The human nodded, though his chest still ached with grief and doubt. He was a soldier, yes, but fighting alongside her felt different, heavier, as if destiny itself pressed down on his shoulders. In the days that followed, the settlement rebuilt what little it could. But while others worked to heal, the human and the sister trained. At first their bond was fragile, filled with silence and unspoken questions. He still saw his fallen partner in her face, and that memory cut him each time he looked. They began in the sparring grounds outside the colony. The sister carried the same blade her people had used for generations, its edge glowing with faint light. The human kept his rifle close, but she stopped him with a sharp shake of her head. No guns, she said firmly. You must learn to fight with more than metal. You must learn to fight with trust. He frowned, but he obeyed. They clashed blade against blade, strike after strike, their movements echoing through the empty field. The human was fast and strong, but she was faster, her strikes sharp, her defenses flawless. He fell again and again, sweat running down his brow, frustration boiling inside him. Do not fight me as if I am your enemy, she said calmly, offering him a hand each time he fell. Then what should I fight you as? He snapped, his voice sharp. As your ally, she answered simply, her eyes glowing with patience. Day by day, they trained, their rhythms slowly forming. The human began to read her movements, to understand her timing. She in turn began to adjust to his style, his human instincts, his stubborn strength. What was once clumsy became sharp. What was once doubt became a fragile trust. But it was not only blades they trained with. The sister showed him something far stranger. She placed his hand on one of the glowing crystals deep in the cavern and whispered, Feel it. Let it speak to you. At first, he felt nothing but cold stone. But then slowly a hum spread through his body, faint at first, then stronger. It was as if the crystal's light had touched his blood. He staggered back, eyes wide. What is this? The same power that lives in me, she said softly, lives in you now, through the bond you shared with her. The human froze, the memory of his partner flooding back, her last smile, her final sacrifice. Had she passed something into him when she gave her life? The thought both terrified and strengthened him. Do not fear it, the sister said, stepping closer. Control it. Under her guidance, he learned to touch the crystals to draw the faintest spark of their energy. It was unstable at first, slipping through his grip like water, but with time, he felt the fire steady, felt it bend to his will, yet the more they trained, the more the human noticed her struggle. Sometimes after unleashing her power, she would fall to her knees, her body trembling, her breath shallow. He rushed to her side each time, worry burning. In his chest, she would only shake her head, whispering, "I am fine," though her glowing eyes dimmed. One evening, as they rested near the fire, he finally asked, "This power, does it harm you?" She looked into the flames, silent for a long time. Before she spoke, "Every time I use it, a piece of me fades. It is not meant for endless battle, but for something greater, something final." Her words sank into him like stone. She was training him, preparing him, not just as an ally, but as someone who might have to carry the weight if she fell. The thought filled him with dread, but also resolve. He could not lose her too, he would not. Their trust grew, shaped by sweat, pain, and unspoken fears. They began to fight as one, their blades and movements flowing like a single force. Even the villagers began to watch in awe, whispering of the human and the sister who trained as if preparing for the end of the galaxy. But trust is always tested. One night, alarms blared again, the sky splitting with fire as enemy scouts descended on the colony. The human and the sister rushed into battle, blades and sparks clashing under the burning sky. In the heat of combat, the human felt the crystal's power stir within him, raw and wild. He unleashed it without thinking, a wave of energy bursting from his hands. The blast tore through the enemy soldiers, but it also shook the ground, nearly collapsing the walls of the settlement. The villagers screamed, chaos spreading. As buildings cracked, the sister grabbed his arm, her eyes wide with shock. "You fool," she hissed. "You cannot control it yet." The human's chest heaved, fear and guilt surging inside him. He had saved lives, yes, but he had also endangered them. The power was not just a gift, it was a danger. As the last of the enemy scouts fled, silence fell over the broken streets. The human stared at his trembling hands, unsure if they were weapons of salvation or destruction. The sister's voice cut through his thoughts, calm but sharp. "This is why we must train harder, because one day you may have to choose whether to save me or to save the galaxy." Her words struck him like a blade. The trust they had built was real, but it was fragile, tested now by fear and power beyond his control. As he looked into her glowing eyes, he knew the truth. Their journey together was only growing darker, and every step forward pulled them closer to a choice neither of them was ready to face. The colony had known peace for only a short time. The scars of battle were still fresh, the ruins half rebuilt, the people still fearful. But peace is never safe when the enemy is patient, and this enemy had been waiting, watching, preparing for their return. The human warrior stood on the edge of the settlement, his eyes scanning the horizon. The air was quiet, too quiet. Even the winds seemed to hold their breath. Beside him, the sister stood with her blade at her side, her glowing eyes sharp with unease. "They are coming," she whispered, her voice heavy. "I can feel them." Before the human could answer, the sky cracked open. Black shapes poured down from the clouds. Warships dark as shadows, their engines roaring like thunder. The villagers screamed, running for shelter as fire lit the heavens. This was no raid, no scouting mission. This was an invasion. The human's chest tightened, rage burning as memories of his partner's last sacrifice flooded back. The same enemy, the same fire, the same hunger in their machines. But this time he was not alone. This time the sister stood beside him, her power glowing bright. "Go to the caverns," she commanded the villagers, her voice ringing with authority. "They seek me, not you. Hide and survive." The people obeyed, their trust in her absolute. The human watched them flee, then turned back to her, his jaw set. "We fight them here," he said, his voice like iron. She nodded once. No fear. In her eyes only certainty. Together they marched toward the rising storm. The first wave struck like a hammer. Enemy soldiers dropped from the skies, their armor thick, their weapons glowing red with energy. The human fired his rifle, cutting them down with precision. Beside him, the sister moved like lightning, her blade slicing through metal as if it were air. For a time, they held the line, their movements a perfect rhythm of steel and fire. The villagers watched from the shadows, hope flickering in their eyes. But then the ground trembled, the air shook, and a massive shape descended. The enemy's war beast, larger than the one that had killed his partner, landed with a roar, its maw glowing with deadly fire. The human's blood turned cold, but he stood firm. The memory of loss became fuel, burning hotter than fear. The sister raised her hand, and the crystals buried deep in the land responded, glowing with her power. The ground shook as energy surged, striking the beast and forcing it back. The battle raged on, each strike shaking the very earth. But the enemy was not here only to destroy. From the shadows, a group of enemy commanders stepped forward, their voices hissing with hunger. "Give us the sister," they called, "or all of you will burn," the human snarled, his grip on his weapon tightening. "You will never have her," he shouted. But the sister placed a hand on his arm, her voice calm, though her eyes burned with fury. "They will never stop," she said softly. "As long as I live, they will hunt." The human turned to her sharply. "Then we fight until they fall," he said. But her gaze held his, filled with something heavier. "No, human. There may come a moment when fighting is not enough, when sacrifice is the only way." Her words cut him deeper than any blade. He could not bear the thought of losing her too. Not after everything, not after building trust. But in her voice, he heard the same tone her sister once carried, the tone of one ready to give everything. The battle pressed harder, the enemy closing in from every side. The human felt the crystal's power stir inside him again, raw and wild. He unleashed it, in a storm of light tearing through enemy lines, his body shaking with the force. The ground cracked, fire blazed, and for a moment the enemy faltered, but the sister caught his arm again, her voice sharp. "Control it, or it will consume you." The human gritted his teeth, forcing the energy down, sweat pouring down his face. He was powerful, but the power was unstable, dangerous. The enemy beast roared again, charging forward, its maw glowing brighter than before. The sister stepped, ahead, her blade shining like a star. "Stay behind me," she ordered, but the human refused. Stepping beside her, his rifle raised. Together they struck, her blade slicing across the beast's armor while his fire tore into its joints. The creature howled, thrashing, smashing the ground with its massive limbs. The shockwave hurled them. Back, dust filling the air, the human coughed, forcing himself to stand, searching for her. When the dust cleared, he saw her, standing tall, her body glowing brighter than ever before. But there was something wrong. Her glow flickered, her breath uneven, her hands trembling. She was pushing herself too far. The human ran to her side, shouting, "Stop, you'll kill yourself." She looked at him, her eyes blazing with sorrow and strength. "If I fall, you must finish what we started," she whispered. The words struck his heart like fire. He wanted to shout, to refuse. But before he could answer, the beast roared again. The enemy commanders raised their hands, their voices echoing across the battlefield. "She is the key," they hissed. "Take her alive." Dozens of enemy soldiers surged forward, overwhelming the defenses. The human fought with everything he had, but they pressed harder, faster, stronger. In the chaos, the sister's glow flared one last time. She unleashed a storm of energy so bright it blinded the field. The enemy soldiers were thrown back, the beast staggered, the sky itself seemed to split. But when the light faded, she was gone. The human froze, his heart stopping. The battlefield lay silent, enemies retreating in shock, but the sister was no longer beside him. She had been taken, pulled into the shadows by the enemy before the light had faded. The human fell to his knees, his fists trembling with rage and despair. He had sworn not to lose her, and yet the enemy had stolen her away. The war was no longer about survival, no longer about victory. It was now about one mission: rescue her or lose everything. The human warrior sat in silence aboard his ship, The stars outside blurred as he pushed the engines faster, chasing the trail of the enemy fleet. His heart burned with fury and grief. His mind filled with only one thought. He had lost one sister already. He would not lose the other. The sister's capture haunted him. He saw again the moment the light faded, the moment the enemy dragged her into the shadows. He heard her last words echoing in his mind. "If I fall, you must finish what we started." But he refused to let those words become her end. Days of pursuit stretched into nights. The enemy fleet was massive, their fortress hidden on a dying world at the edge of the stars. The human had no allies now, no army to call upon. Only his will, his weapons, and the strange power that pulsed inside his blood. It was enough. It had to be. At last, the fortress came into view. A vast structure of black stone and steel, rising from a wasteland of ash guarded by ships and beasts. The human tightened his grip on the controls, his heart steady. He whispered to himself, "I'm coming for you." He slipped through their defenses with cunning and fire, blasting his way past guards and war machines. His rifle sang, his blade struck, his fury carried him forward. The power of the crystal stirred within him, guiding his strikes, filling his body with strength. Every step brought him closer to her, closer to the heart of the enemy. Deep inside the fortress, he found her. The sister stood in chains of glowing energy, her body weak, her eyes dim but still alive. Around her, the enemy commanders chanted, their voices sharp and cruel. They sought to unlock the power in her blood, to twist it for their own destruction. The human's shout shook the chamber. "Let her go." The commanders turned, their faces twisted with hunger. One hissed, "You are too late, human. With her blood we will burn the stars." The human's rage exploded. He charged, his rifle blazing, his blade cutting through shadows. The battle shook the fortress, his fury like a storm. But the enemy was countless, their power great. At the heart of the chaos, the sister cried out, "Human, stop, they want you too. Together we are the key." Her words froze him for a moment. The truth struck like a hammer. He was not only fighting beside her, he was part of the same destiny. The commanders laughed, their voices echoing. "Yes, human, you carry the spark she gave you. You are bound to her bloodline. Together you can unlock the weapon of the ancients." The human's chest tightened, his breath sharp. Was this why his partner had chosen him? Why she had sacrificed herself? The sister's eyes burned, filled with both fear and strength. "Listen to me," she cried. "They want us to open it, but if we do, the galaxy will fall. You must choose me or the stars." The human staggered, torn between two worlds. He had come to save her, but now the fate of millions hung on his choice. The battle roared around him, blades clashing, fire burning. He fought with desperation, cutting down the commanders one by one, his power blazing bright. At last, only one remained, and with its dying breath, it unleashed a surge of energy into the sister's chains. The prison shattered, but the force hurled them both to the ground. The human crawled to her side, lifting her into his arms. Her skin was pale, her breath shallow, but her eyes still glowed faintly. "You came for me?" she whispered, her voice weak. "Always," he answered, his grip tight. But the fortress shook, the ground splitting. The ancient weapon beneath them began to stir, awakened by their joined presence. A core of light burned deep under the earth, rising with terrible power. The sister clutched his arm, her eyes wide with fear. "This is it," she gasped. "The final moment. If we leave it, the enemy will return. If we destroy it, one of us must stay." The human's heart cracked, the choice clear and cruel. Sacrifice once again. But this time, he would not let her carry it alone. He pressed her hand into his voice firm. "I will do it. I will stay. You must live." Her eyes filled with tears, her voice sharp with defiance. "No, human, you cannot. This was always my burden, not yours." The ground split wider, the weapon's power rising like fire ready to consume the stars. The human's voice broke as he shouted, "I lost your sister. I will not lose you too." But she shook her head, her glowing eyes fierce. "You will not lose me because I will live through you," she whispered. Before he could stop her, she surged to her feet, her body glowing brighter than ever. She stepped into the heart of the core, her power fusing with the ancient light. Her scream echoed like thunder, shaking the fortress. The human reached for her, but the blast forced him back. The core exploded in a storm of energy, tearing through the fortress, destroying the weapon, destroying the enemy fleet above. The world shook, fire swallowing everything, and then silence. When the light faded, the fortress lay in ruins, the enemy gone. The human staggered to his feet, his body broken, his heart heavier than ever. She was gone, her body lost to the stars, but her sacrifice had saved the galaxy. He fell to his knees, his hands trembling, tears burning his eyes. Twice now, sisters of the same blood had given their lives for him, and twice he had been left behind carrying the weight of their trust. But deep inside, he felt their voices, their strength, their bond. The war was not over, he knew. The galaxy still held shadows, still held enemies that would rise again. But he would fight, not for revenge, not for glory, but for them, for the sisters who had given everything. As he rose, his eyes burned with fire. The human was no longer just a survivor, no longer just a soldier. He was the bearer of their legacy, the last spark of their bloodline, and as the stars stretched before him, he whispered, "This is not the end.